Ci troviamo qui nella parte dimostrativa della
We are
lezione.
here in the demonstration part of lesson on short crusts. We're going to see together the main passages to make a perfect sablé short crust. I remind you that for the other methods, both the classical and the whipped one, we will have it during the whole video classes, practical video classes. So the ingredients we need is a 00 weak flour. Here we have some butter, a classical Italian butter, 82 mg, so fat matter. We have some icing sugar and some egg yolks. Then we have our aromatic part. In this case, I prefer to use lemon and a pinch of salt. Remember that the important thing when we're using powders in general in pastry is always to sift them, and this will allow us to obtain a better oxygenation for flours, but also icing, sugar, cocoa, every powder. So a good oxygenation, and at the same time we're removing eventual clumps that might be present because of a not perfect preservation, or especially for when we stack the packs of flours one on top of the other. In that case, we are kind of pressing the air and keeping the humidity, and in time we might obtain some humidity in the flour. And this, of course, will give us problems during the preparations. So let's take our sifter. We're going to put it directly in the planetary bowl, and we're going to insert our flour. We're going to sift directly in the bowl to avoid losing some passages. If some clumps remain, just push it with a spatula. We're going to insert our butter. Remember, the butter, it's important to measure the temperature of it with a thermometer to make sure we're working at a temperature of around 10 degrees. The butter cut into pieces is very important because in this way the sanding process is quicker. So it's not just important to have a correct temperature, but also that more or less all of the pieces have the same size and shape, so that the sanding process will be a little bit more regular. We're going to insert the butter inside. Then a pinch of salt. We're adding salt to balance the flavor. We're just lowering the sugary tone, and this will improve the sensation during the chewing. And we're going to take a microplane and grating some lemon zest. Always remember that when you're using a microplane, it is not just any grater, so we must pass the microplane directly on the product. Never do the contrary like this, because all of the blades of the microplane might flatten in time, so we would ruin it. It's a very good catcher, so that we're just doing this to catch our product, to collect the peel. Now we're going to insert the leaf paddle, which is one of the 3 instruments that we have in the planetary, together with the whisk and the spiral hook, and we're going to use it to mix. So of course we're attaching the planetary bowl. The majority of planetary machines that you will meet in your life, so shelf planetary machines, have either on the side in this area or behind a button to lift the arm and close it, and we're going to let it go, so turning it on, and we're going to mix. The speed is medium to low. In this way we have a more correct absorption, and we're not overheating the butter too much. Remember that in this phase you must constantly check the temperature of the butter. I'm reminding you, as we already explained in the theory part, if for any reason we realize that the butter is heating up too much, turn off the machine and blast chill the bowl with the product inside to lower the temperature. The breakage, so melting point of the butter, is around 28 and 32 degrees. And this means that from that moment on, the butter stops being a stable emulsion and the central parts, so the water and the fats and the proteins will separate. So we don't have the right emulsifying skill that gives us the compactness of the product. As we go on, the butter is slowly doing its job, which is waterproofing the proteins of the flour. We're going to turn on a little bit, lifting the arm of the machine. Every now and then I'm just stirring with the spatula like this, because tendentially so the leaf does not perfectly touch the base of the bowl. So every now and then we have to push a little bit on one side to let it adhere, or lift the bowl a little bit. This is important because we've got to make sure that we are working with the whole part of the ingredients. So we're going to restart it, again on low speed, creating a slight pressure. Now I'm going to stop. I'm going to just crumble a little bit with my hands. So we're taking into account that it's very, very warm in our laboratory, so we must take it under control, keep it under control. We're going to crumble it a little bit with our hands, and then we're going to insert, moving the leaf, setting it aside, we're going to insert the icing sugar. And here the right sifting is fundamental too. So before adding it, I'm showing you nicely, there must be a good grain size, must be crumbly, and so we make sure that the butter has completely worked in all of the dough. We're going to sift our icing sugar in, always using the help of a spatula to make the sifting quicker. Remember that when you let the powder and you turn on the machine, always start with a low speed, otherwise the powders will fly all around. Let's reinsert the leaf. Like this, always low speed. Again, pressuring, so putting some pressure on the arm of the machine. The work has to work just a little bit with the base of butter, salt, flour, and salt and aromas, because the sugar might stimulate the overheating of the butter. So at the sides there still is the icing sugar, so what I'm doing is I'm going to just lift the bowl a few times. This is something that must be done with the right awareness, because otherwise you might ruin the machine. Or still, if you want to make sure you're not breaking anything, you can just lift the arm and stir manually with your spatula to control that we allowed the sugar to integrate completely in the first base. What we're obtaining visually is, it almost looks like grated Parmesan or almond flour. So the sanding is complete. I'm going to show you. See, it's completely fine. And now, as we obtained this structure, we can add the eggs. So remember that probably this first step is the most difficult part to keep under control. Remember that your main concern is to keep the temperature of the butter under control. If you notice that for any reason you overheated the mixture too much and instead of becoming a powder like this, it clumps up, we can use the dough for other preparations, maybe to make a crumble. Because as you will learn to know, a crumble is born by a mistaken short crust. Now we're going to insert our eggs. Here we have an egg yolk. I'm going to scrape the container nicely. Going to reinsert a leaf. Again, medium to low speed. As the egg clumps the mixture up, we're going to stop the machine to finish the working directly on our working surface. We don't have to overwork it, we just have to assemble it and compact it. So as you can see from the camera, we joined and clumped the mixture 80% of the way. We can turn off the machine. When you shape your short crust, don't add any other powders, because the flour in this case we used a wheat 00 weak flour, and the flour would tend to enter the short crust and it might unbalance the ratio of ingredients that we chose in the beginning. Now we're going to take our short crust dough, scraping a little bit on our working surface, and from this instant we have to just make it compact with very simple movements, avoiding to overheat it. Small passages. We're going to compact a little bit on one side and the other, and if the result you obtain is optimal, you'll notice that the short crust is not sweating, there are no external fat particles. You need to see the color of the short crust. There mustn't be some yellow stripes. It means that the egg hasn't entered completely in the mixture. And from here, again, pushing it to improve the cooling phase in the fridge or blast chiller. Avoid to make balls because the cooling phase will be much slower, and when we'll take it, we'll have to work a little bit more to re-soften it. And this is it with the demonstration part of Sablè short crust.